So welcome to our last webinar. Quite sad, really. It is officially the end of our webinar series for now, anyway. Certainly, we've enjoyed doing them and do intend on writing some more, really. I'd love to write another series next year. And this one has been very much based on your feedback as well, because originally we ran a series based on the different stages of the recruitment process. So we were looking at assessment centres, telephone interviews, final interviews. And then from that, we went on to ask you what you'd like us to look at further. And it was the skills that employers are looking for. And that's really fed into some of the topics that we've covered as part of this series. So at the end of this session, as we do for all of our webinars, we have a short survey. It'd just be great if you want to leave us any comments about what you'd want to see in future series. That would be brilliant, because we really enjoyed doing them. And it has gone very fast indeed. Oh, thank you, Esther. I do recognise quite a few names now in the chat, which is really good. We've had a few regulars join us for the webinar series, which is fantastic. Okay, so let's make a start this morning with learning agility. And I just wanted to begin by saying that this is a very, very important skill, and it's become increasingly important. We recently did some research with the Institute of Student Employers, and they're an organisation that bring universities, early careers employers and suppliers like ourselves at SRS together to kind of share best practice in the world of graduate recruitment and apprenticeship recruitment and so on. And they surveyed, I think it's about 198 of their employers, small and large, up and down the country, lots of different sectors there. And they confirmed that learning agility is one of the top 3 skills that they're looking for. So very important topic that we're going to cover this morning. Okay, and just as a bit of a reminder, we are at the end of our webinar series now, but we have covered 8 topics in total, and all of them were recorded, and you can access them on our YouTube channel, SRS Recruitment and Employability Experts. Sophie will probably type that into the chat for you. So please do look up our webinars on there, and there's lots of other free resources as well. Now, each of these webinars typically lasts around 30 to 40 minutes, very much based on how much interaction we get from yourselves. Really do like to hear your comments, for you to share your own insights and experiences. And there'll be a couple of opportunities during this webinar to get involved and to do some polls and so on. So please do join us for that. And introductions, for those of you who don't know me already, I'm Helen, and I'm the University Partnerships Manager for SRS. So a lot of my work revolves around working quite closely with a number of universities, lots of students and graduates like yourselves, to really help prepare you for those graduate roles and those placements, to prepare you for the recruitment process. We run lots of webinars, workshops, practical exercises, assessment centre simulations, all geared at really helping to give you the edge going forward. Please do feel free to link in with me. I'm quite active on LinkedIn in particular, so feel free to drop me a message there, or an invite, or a question or comment. I really do like signing off these webinars and always having a stack of invites from people wanting to connect with me. So please do that, because we're a very sociable bunch at SRS. Sophie, do you want to say hello?
Yeah, sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Sophie. I'm the MD here at SRS, working alongside Helen and the team. Absolutely love what we do, working with students, with the universities and with employers as well. Great fun. I'm also really sad it's the end of the webinar series. It does seem to have gone really, really fast. So yeah, I was just about to put something in the chat there, which I'll press return on in a second. But you know, when this one ends, do spend a few minutes just filling out the survey at the end and give us some ideas for future content, because if we get some ideas about what you'd like to see next, then we will end up doing another series. So please do give us your feedback. Like Helen, I'm pretty sociable too. You can see all the channels that I'm on listed under my name there, and I would also love to connect, so hopefully see you there. I am on chat for most of this session. I've got a few slides in the middle, so if you've got any comments, questions or queries, please just remember to set it to all panelists and attendees. And yeah, back to you, Helen.
Thanks very much, Sophie. Okay. So as part of today's webinar, we're going to obviously explore what the definition of learning agility is. We're going to look at some of the advantages of being an agile learner, particularly in the workplace, why it has become so important in recent times. And as always, we like to look at those top tips, those techniques around how best to develop and demonstrate this particular skill. But before we delve a bit further, I'm going to kick off with a poll. And I'm just hopefully going to launch that on your screen now. So you should have 3 questions pop up there. Are you energized by new problems and challenges? Do you learn from your mistakes? And do you struggle with doing things differently to what you're used to? So 3 questions there with yes, no options. Great if you get involved. Just give you a few moments there to respond. Brilliant. Okay, I think we've got most of you there submitting a response, which is great. I'll end that little poll. Share the results there. So the reason why I've chosen these 3 questions as part of this poll is because the answers to these questions give some indication as to whether or not you're an agile learner. So are you energized by new problems and challenges? So a good chunk of you there, 7 of you have said yes, and 3 of you have said no. And thanks for being honest there, admitting that actually you prefer not to deal with those new problems, that, perhaps you're not as comfortable dealing with challenges. And as you'd expect, an agile learner is someone who is energized by new problems and challenges. And that's something we'll look at a bit later on. Do you learn from your mistakes? Yes, fantastic. That's what you want to see. Do you struggle with doing things differently to what you're used to? And again, some very honest answers here. So most of you admitting to struggling to doing things differently. And again, that's a very key question because it is at the crux of being an agile learner, is about being able to go out of your comfort zone, to actually relish the opportunity of going out of your comfort zone, to learning new things, that are actually very, very different to what has gone before and what you're used to. And again, we'll look at that in a bit more detail. Okay, thanks very much for taking part in that. Okay. So before we begin to define what learning agility is, we need to appreciate the difference between ability and agility. Because basically, agility starts where your ability ends. Your ability can only take you so far, and from this point, your agility becomes so much more important. So it might be helpful to think of learning ability as being more IQ-based, whereas learning agility is much more behavioural. Now you can train, you can be taught different abilities, whereas learning agility is something that needs to be developed. And typically, ability is also assessed by past experience, past achievements, whereas learning agility is assessed by potential. So more specifically, what does it mean to be an agile learner? It's about being able to figure something out without knowing how to do it. So firstly, it means being curious, asking questions, exploring options, and seeking out knowledge. An agile learner thinks and understands information quickly. They're flexible to new ideas, unexpected challenges, and can effectively pivot to purpose, which could mean quickly changing to reflect what customers or the organisation needs. They also experiment and are comfortable with taking risks. In unfamiliar situations, they will be calm and confident in approaching problems, and uncertainty becomes an exciting opportunity rather than a fearful part of work. Essentially, an agile learner is comfortable being uncomfortable. They also learn from their mistakes and apply this experience going forward, connecting past and present to help make informed decisions. And ultimately, agile learners have the right mindset, a growth mindset. which means they're compelled to keep challenging themselves, to keep developing their skills. Now, this is a very popular quote from an author, Pearl Zhu. And for me, she really gets to the crux of what learning agility is all about. Learning agility is the willingness and ability to learn, de-learn, and relearn. Limitations on learning are barriers invented by humans. And really, for me, this is the most succinct definition of what it's all about. It's about having done something a certain way, perhaps for a few years, that's the way you've always been shown, the way you've always been taught, but you might have to completely unlearn that and do something very, very differently to what has gone before, and be able to do that quickly and move across to doing that without too much resistance. I'm just going to hand you over to Sophie now to look at a few different approaches to this.
Thanks, Helen. So there is a lot of debate around taking an agile approach compared to what is called a waterfall approach. This debate originates in software development, where a waterfall approach would involve systematically working through stages that start with customer requirements, followed by design, implementation, and testing. This is considered to be a time-tested and practical approach. For example, the waterfall approach would be great for projects that involve creating a building where you would need to do things in order and build the walls before the roof. However, the agile approach is more adaptable to sudden changes, whether that be in the sector or from the customer, whose understanding of what they need tends to evolve as the project goes on. An agile approach means that you can circle back to recreate and review different elements. So let's look at these approaches in relation to your career journey. If you were to apply the waterfall model to applying for jobs, you'd probably begin by identifying your values, strengths, or skills. You would then set objectives and apply for roles and organisations based on this. You may be lucky enough to secure a role first time, but if you're not, or it's not the role that you want, then the agile approach is going to make more sense. For example, perhaps you receive some constructive feedback that might mean that you want to revisit your initial assessment of your strengths or skills, or perhaps your values change as you go through the process. Alternatively, there might be changes in the graduate labour market which require you to adjust your objectives. Throughout this process, it's important to be sensitive to change, both externally and within yourself, and to learn from experience. So what are the advantages of being an agile learner? Well, agile learners will potentially find it easier to navigate the recruitment process. And there are some other key advantages too. Because agile learners are keen to try new things, they're often seen to be innovators whose contribution is highly valued. It will mean that you are adaptable and therefore able to quickly adjust to new circumstances, as opposed to being overwhelmed or anxious about the constant technological changes at the moment. It will also encourage you to be flexible, moving away from the idea that planning is only done at the start of a project. By far, the greatest advantage is that you will never see yourself as the finished article. You will always be learning and improving yourself. So why has learning agility become increasingly important? Well, previously the term disruptor has been used in a negative sense, whereas now it is frequently used in relation to the volatile and uncertain times that we're living in. A linear approach to business, or indeed your career, is becoming less relevant. Certain skills are increasingly becoming obsolete, and you need to be prepared to go from doing something that you know well to quickly learning something that you don't. There will be few jobs for life, and instead the types of roles and tasks required will continue to evolve, requiring you to continuously update and refresh your skills. Employees must be able to think beyond traditional practices and established rules. Learning agility is also seen to be the secret to success in the current workplace, with a lot of leaders recognised as being successful because of how they handled disruption. Some of these disruptions include constantly changing business strategies and working with people in different ways from different cultures. We've always had to deal with change. So, for example, roles in finance, which require employees to grasp new information and deliver quick results in new situations, for example. But what is different today is the pace and impact of change, and your approach to this will determine whether or not you are an agile learner. Back to you, Helen.
Okay, thanks very much, Sophie. So there has been lots of research into learning agility, and I'm just going to launch another poll here. Just bear with me there. It's got 4 questions with some options there for you to choose from. And I'd just like you to have a guess as to what you think the right answer is. So starting off with that first question, how much higher are profit margins for those who have high learning agility? How much more engaged are individuals with high learning agility likely to be? And how much more likely is it for individuals with high learning agility to be promoted? And finally, what percentage of the global workforce is considered to have high learning agility? So this is based on some recent research done on 1 million executives around the world. I'll give you a few moments to post your answers there. Some clear front runners, which is great. You can see all the answers are positive ones. It certainly doesn't have a detrimental effect on profit and engagement. Okay. Great. I think we've got most people there having responded. Give you one more moment. Okay, I think we'll close the poll there. Again, share those results so you can see. That first question, how much higher are profit margins? So a lot of you, most of you there have gone for 40%. Some of you have gone for 25%. And most of you think that people who are high agile learners are going to be 5 times more engaged. And how much more likely is it for individuals with high learning to be promoted? We've gone for 5 times more likely. A lot of you have gone for the best possible options there. And what percentage of the global workforce is considered to have high learning agility? So again, most of you have gone for middle ground there, 27%. So let's have a little look at the answers. So this is research from the Korn Ferry Institute, again on nearly, I think it's about 1 million executives. And it was found that these executives who are highly agile have 25% higher profit margin. So I know a lot of you went higher than that, but certainly 25% is a substantial difference. And they're 5 times more likely to be engaged. These individuals are also likely to be promoted twice as fast. But most interestingly, only 15% of the global workforce are considered to be highly agile. I thought that was quite low, but it might not come as a surprise when you consider the skills gaps that we have in our economy at the moment. So in a lot of cases, people have been hired based on their abilities, but rapidly changing technology, for example, has meant that these same people no longer have the ability to do their job. And employers are being increasingly challenged to assess on a candidate's potential to learn, rather than using past experience as the best indicator of future success. You know, employers are increasingly wanting those who can learn on the go, you know, learn while they work and work while they learn. So people might have a number of abilities, a number of skills at the moment in coding, in programming, and using different equipment and so on. But they need to be prepared that that equipment, that particular coding language might be redundant in a few years' time. So it is about being able to learn those new things. That's more important than the abilities themselves at the moment. And looking at what do you need to be an agile learner, part of that is to have a growth mindset. And this is something we cover in another webinar, one of our earlier ones, I think motivation, mindset and me. But to break it down even more, what's essentially needed is to have that open and receptive mindset, you know, that motivation to learn. And I'm going to give you an example from my own experience where, you know, many years ago, I was a John Lewis partnership manager. And I was part of a development program where we had to collaborate with officers from the RAF. There was no real structure to the program. And at the end, we had to present back on what we'd learned, you know, how that could help us and more specifically the business. And some of our group, me included, were actually quite skeptical about how this would work, because at the end of the day, we were in very different sectors. And actually, I had a little bit of imposter syndrome when I compared my role as a retail manager to those who essentially handled life and death situations in the RAF. However, I did spend some time reflecting on what we could learn, such as shared leadership techniques, and I went in open-minded about the ways of working. And there was actually a lot we had in common with regards to working under pressure, meeting targets, and we were able to determine the best approaches that worked for both of us. And so for me, that was again about going in there with that open and receptive mindset about what I could learn from that experience. And similarly, I've come across a lot of students recently, who've signed up for courses or internships that have nothing to do with their degree program, but they're just keen to learn more broadly and to supplement their soft skills to see what's out there. And, agile learners really do need to be engaged and inspired by learning, because it can be a long road to changing ingrained behaviours and habits. It's not necessarily an easy journey, so you've got to have that motivation in place. Now, in terms of how to demonstrate and measure learning agility, there's been some further research from Burke at Columbia University, who identified 9 dimensions that make up learning agility. And I'll talk about each of these in turn. So the first, and probably one of the most important, is speed. So this is about processing information and acting on ideas quickly. You need to be a quick study, prepared to abandon non-working ideas in favour of accelerating other possibilities. Flexibility is about adapting to change, being able to switch between different ways of working. And collaborating, that's about working with others in such a way that you all learn more. Now, you may have to take account of different learning styles, possibly work with some very difficult people, but you'll keep focused on what you can learn and how this will help you achieve results. Experimenting involves trying out new ideas or behaviours to get things done, a willingness to embrace that process of trial and error. And as you'd expect, feedback seeking is about regularly getting that feedback on your ideas and overall performance. And to increase your ability to learn, you really do have to be willing to receive feedback on how you're doing. Information seeking means continually updating your knowledge with new information, keeping it fresh, keeping it current. And interpersonal risk taking is the extent to which a person admits to their mistakes and asks for help. Some people don't, it's not natural for some people to be able to do that because they think that asking for help is a sign of weakness, which is why that's under that term, interpersonal risk taking. It's taking a risk. Performance risk taking is how much a person seeks out new and ambiguous challenges, where they're outside of their comfort zone and unsure of the outcome. And finally, reflecting on your experiences and what you have learned from them is very important. Think about how and why you did something and how you will apply this in the future. Now, typically employers will have tests or ask questions which show how well candidates demonstrate some of these dimensions. So such as making decisions on the spot, adapting to change, how you've suggested or how you will suggest innovative solutions. Ultimately, they want to know if a candidate can figure out a way through a new situation without actually knowing what to do. So how can you demonstrate these 9 areas to an employer in some of these exercises and interview answers? So let's delve a little bit deeper. So for speed, you could use an example of an event you were involved with, where changes to the venue or available resources meant that you had to make quick decisions. Alternatively, think about a time when you've been given information to prepare and present at short notice. There are so many examples that you could use to showcase your flexibility. And one I like to refer to is, I recently spoke to a number of fashion students whose assignments had meant making garments and doing photo shoots using university facilities. But the lockdown restrictions meant that they had to completely rethink their product. They had to use phone apps and family as part of their photo shoots. So for me, that was quite a good example of being flexible and adaptable. Collaborating is essentially teamwork, but to show your learning agility in particular, make sure you elaborate upon how you listened and learned from others in the team. You know, you might have an example where you were set on one course of action, but you learned about a different and better approach from someone else. Experimenting is all about showing how you're willing to move away from tried and tested approaches and give new things a go. So you might be responsible for the social media for a particular group, charity or organisation. They may have set guidelines, but you're not afraid to try new things to increase engagement and interaction. And another example of experimenting, this could be as basic as a change to your new daily routine. So it could be quite a simple one that you look at. We all get feedback, and rather than giving an example of this when it's a given, such as feedback from a manager as part of a formal review or feedback from a tutor on an essay, think about a time when you proactively asked for feedback from immediate colleagues or teammates. And you should certainly be taking advantage of any opportunity to get feedback on your performance in the recruitment process, any practice sessions or feedback on your CV. Moving on to information seeking, think about how you keep your knowledge up to date, especially if you're interested in a particular sector or organisation. You might be able to show what you've learned from regularly reading journals, listening to different podcasts or different webinars. And in terms of interpersonal risk-taking, give an example of a mistake that shows how you asked for help and what you learned from it. Show some vulnerability in that recruitment process. Perhaps there was a time when you forgot to communicate something or created something faulty. And by asking for help, you might learn about new practices or techniques that will help you in the future. And being open and honest about your mistakes certainly encourages others to do the same. Moving on to performance risk taking, when have you taken a risk with this? Can you give an example of when you took on a new and challenging role or responsibility, such as setting up a society or a new business venture? Quite a few of you have become entrepreneurs out there. And finally, it's important to reflect on your performance to become more effective. Do you log your learning? Do you log your achievements and mistakes? Have you taken time to reflect on a particular process or way of working that you have since changed? So we've shared lots of examples and behaviours as part of being an agile learner. And I just wanted to summarise some of our top tips in this area. You always want to showcase a proactive rather than a passive approach, whether that's being proactive with your personal development or proactive in finding a solution. Seek out those new challenges and experiences where you will struggle, but you will also grow. And when confronted with a problem, look beyond the obvious and easy options. Is there a more innovative solution that's going to save even more time and effort? And don't just consider the short-term impact, but the long-term implications as well. Always identify those opportunities in which to ask for help, gain a different perspective and to learn from others. And evaluate the lessons that you have learned. Use this self-reflection to adapt and apply these lessons in the future. And this is a useful reminder from Bill Gates about what it takes to succeed. Success today requires the agility and drive to constantly rethink, reinvigorate, react, and reinvent. It is never too soon or too late to develop your learning agility. And remember that your current skill set is not as important as your ability to learn, because at some point you will stop being a student, but you will never stop being a learner. And I always again like to close with a couple of things to think about going forwards. What will be your next challenge? And what can you do differently that will help you to learn and develop? Now, happy at this point to take any questions, if there's been any comments. it looks like you've all been very quiet during the session, which is absolutely fine. But if you did have any questions at this point that you wanted to share, please let me know if you think this session has been useful. Have you come across learning agility before, perhaps? Or is it an entirely new concept to you? You're a very, very quiet group this morning, but that's fine. Oh, I've got one there. How does being an agile learner help in building professional relationships? So, and it is quite an important part of collaborating and then building those relationships, because you're open to other people's perspectives, you're open to learning from others. So you don't just accept that your idea is going to be the best. I go into, hopefully, I try to go into a lot of meetings and group situations where I view them as learning opportunities. You know, what can I gain? What can I learn from others? Agile learners tend to be people who do take the time to listen to other people, to see what can be gained from their experience and perspective. So that is a good foundation from building that relationship. I like that. So you've put, I'm an agile learner, but I've never used the term to describe myself. Yes, yeah, no, it is. Sometimes you have these skills and attributes, but yeah, you've never associated it with a particular way of wording it. I used to feel a bit like that about imposter syndrome, because I've suffered with that in my career, but I didn't realise there was an actual word for it until a couple of years ago. Yeah, it's definitely, out of all the topics we've covered as part of this webinar series, and there's some very important skills, I think learning agility is the one that I would want you to champion, to really get behind, because it does feed into a lot of those other areas. Because if you're an agile learner, you tend to be that bit more resilient, you tend to have that growth mindset, which is going to motivate you. It does feed into a lot of the other skills that employers are looking for as well. Yes, so thank you very much, Karina, there for the feedback. And yes, we do record all of our webinars. They are uploaded to our YouTube channel, so you can watch them at your leisure. And if you feel they'd be relevant and helpful for anyone else you know, please do refer them there to our channel. How do agile learners deal with adversity? So I would say they deal with it very well. It's not to say that they don't get down and have moments where they're frustrated. You know, they're not going to perhaps stay positive all of the time, but when they've had a moment to reflect upon adversity, they will then take that time out to reflect what they've learned from it, how they could do things differently in the future. So that reflection piece is quite an important part of it. If it's a particular barrier, an obstacle in their way, they'll spend some time learning about how they can get past it, what they can learn from others. They will probably relish the opportunity of having the chance to tackle that barrier and that problem. If you think about some of these people who coast through life, you know, everything's handed to them. They have a very easy set of circumstances where they don't have those constant challenges and barriers. They perhaps don't learn and grow as much as the rest of us, you know, other individuals who have had that adversity, who have had those problems along the way. You tend to learn a lot more from adversity, mistakes and challenges than you do from other things that are just that bit easier. People learn more when they're out of their comfort zone than when they're within it. That would be my thoughts on that. Have you got anything you'd add to that, Sophie?
No, I think that's a good response.
Yeah, okay. Well, thanks very much there, everyone, for joining us for our last webinar. As I say, if you could just take a couple of minutes to do the survey, there's a bit at the end where you can just put general comments, and just if you do have any suggestions for future topics, that would be very much appreciated. But thank you for joining us. I suppose it just remains for me to say have a great summer. It might be a little bit mixed with a few thunderstorms, but there's certainly another heat wave to come. So I hope you can all have a bit of time out and enjoy yourselves. Thank you.